folks, it's me, Michaela, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing another sit down video, kind of talk about things, which I know is kind of like not my norm. I'm usually a little reading vlog girly, more reading than vlog with all of that, but still, I don't usually do a lot of like these kind of sit down style videos, but I have started a new job last week. And so I'm just adjusting to making videos while now working, you know, full time in an office. And also I'm just like not even reading as much because I've been trying to like absorb so much information with training at this new like job that I get home and my brain just like shuts off. I like try to read and my brain's like sleepy time even though I'm not tired because it's like my mind is tired. Anyway, I thought it might be fun to then try and like brainstorm some videos where I just kind of like talk instead of having to do all of the reading part behind the scenes. And I thought it might be fun to chat about some classics that I would like to read. So this is probably like a much larger list than what I have. I've just made a list of 10. And that's kind of because these are ones that I'm like actively interested in reading now. I have like a general want to read classics, not necessarily because I like love them all the time, but I do get a lot of enjoyment out of knowing things. So having read classics and then being able to know what that book is and what it's about when other people maybe talk or reference it is something that brings my little I spent 8 years at university, studious heart, some joy. These are classics that I actually would like to read, and I have written down my reasonings for them. Now that I'm looking at these little reasonings I gave, some of them are strange, but you know what? That's what you get for playing at your video while you're half asleep at 11 p.m. Well, let's just like dive right in. Except maybe let's not dive right in because something's in my eyeball. Now that my eye has finished freaking out, let's actually dive right in and talk about 10 classics that are on my TBR. Yay! So the first few, I'm gonna be honest, this is a very Jane Austen heavy list. And that is because I want to read like all of the Jane Austen. I've read Pride and Prejudice. I would also like to reread Pride and Prejudice, but I did not put rereads of classics on this TBR. This is for first time readings only. And I do have quite an interest in reading the works of Jane Austen. So like a third of the list is Jane Austen. Sorry, not sorry. So first up I have Emma, and this is actually probably the one that I want to read the most. And it's just because I've heard from many sources, just like kind of like a general consensus, that I think Emma is a lot of people's favorites. I've heard that there's a lot of like humor in it that I think will be really interesting. And it just sounds like a fun story out of the Jane Austens. This Emma has been like one that is like top of the list for me, and that is why. It's just that I've heard that it's one of the better ones according to a lot of people, and therefore I'd like to read it. The second Jane Austen is Mansfield Park. I'm gonna be honest with you, the only reason I want to read this is because there's an opera that is based off of Mansfield Park. I am an opera singer, so I'm interested in reading the source material. And that's like the only reason. I think if there wasn't an opera, I probably wouldn't even be too interested in the Mansfield Park story, but here we are. I want to read Mansfield Park because there's an opera. And then I've also put on the list Persuasion, and then also Sense and Sensibility, just because, and I will quote myself from my notes, I've come this far, so why not add more? So I guess I just decided, you know what, I've already planned on reading so much Jane Austen that I might as well just keep going and, you know, read more of them. To like it's a game. It's like Jane Austen bingo. So I don't have any reasons to read those other than that. Good job, Michaela, on really justifying your choices here. So number 5 on the list that I have is not Jane Austen. It is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Bronte, and this is actually because I own it. I got this lovely little collection of Wuthering Heights, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and Jane Eyre by the Bronte sisters. One from each of them. How exciting, right? I've already read Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, so I have The Tenant of Wildfell Hall left. And since I already own it, and I did enjoy both Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, I actually think it might be fun to reread Wuthering Heights and then make a video giving a synopsis of the plot. It has been requested that I make it by my sister. The first time I read Wuthering Heights, I thought the plot was so weirdly complex that I made a video explaining it through the family tree of the two families, because if you read Wuthering Heights, so many people just have the same name and they don't need to have the same name, but they do, and I find that so funny. Anyway, so I think it might be fun to actually make that a YouTube video, but that's a whole other tangent I'm going on now. So basically, I own the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and it's the only Bronte sister I haven't read at this point, and I've enjoyed both of the stories by the other two Bronte sisters, so I really have no reason to not have read this already from this cute little secondhand book I got at a secondhand bookstore, because that's where you get secondhand books. Number 6 on my list of classics I want to read is Dracula by Bram Stoker, and this is because I discovered recently that I have never read a vampire story. I've never read Twilight, which I think is the most famous, infamous, you choose, vampire story of late, because obviously I think Dracula is the most famous vampire story. But I was thinking about how I haven't read any stories with the basis of vampires, and that I feel if that's the case, then perhaps the most popular vampire story should be where I start. Because you know how people say that vampire lore is changed by authors? I don't know what the original vampire lore is, so I want to do my research and read Dracula first. I know that there was another vampire story, I think, what is it, Carmilla? Is that what it's called? That came before Dracula, and that's kind of the original vampire story. But Dracula is probably the most known one, and so that's the one that I put on my list. Though obviously Carmilla, if that's the correct name, is also in the overall bubble of classics I want to read to have knowledge. that is there. Then number 7, I have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I put this on the list because I've never read it, and I feel like everybody has read this. Didn't everybody have to read this in school? It was never part of my school curriculum, so I just never read it, and I feel like I'm maybe missing out. I'm not in the know. I don't have the general knowledge because I didn't read it in school, because I was reading Catcher in the Rye and hating it. I don't know if saying I hate Catcher in the Rye is a hot take or not, but yeah, I could not stand that book. I remember reading it in high school, and one point I really wanted to throw the book at a wall, but I didn't because the book belonged to the school and I didn't want to beat up the book. So that's why I want to read The Great Gatsby. Number 8, I have The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now this one is another really cute. Shall we read what I wrote down? My reasonings for wanting to read The Picture of Dorian Gray is, quote, selling your soul for beauty. I'm in, end quote. Yeah, that's all. I'm just gonna move on. I think that basically covers everything. So the 9th classic on my TBR is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I thought that this would be really fun to read during spooky time, the spooky season. Now, I haven't really been somebody who mood reads that way, who's it's Halloween, let me read Halloween. Also, I'm just not really a Halloween person. But I did start doing seasonal TBRs recently. I did a winter TBR. I'm currently in the middle of my spring TBR, and that's kind of been working for me. So I feel like it might be really fun to put Frankenstein on a fall TBR, read it during October time when monsters and Halloween and all that is, at its peak. That's the plan. So the 10th and final book that I put on this list for classics to read is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And this is really just on there because I feel there are so many references to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I feel like I only get them from like context of having heard these references so long, and I would just really love to understand these references and mentions because I've actually read the source material and I know. You know? I'm now seeing at the end of this list that basically the only reason I want to read classics is so that I can feel smart and educated. I just crave knowledge. So those are 10 classics on my TBR. Another short video again this week. Hopefully I'll be back to making reading vlogs, and I'll have a reading vlog for you soon where I will just rattle on and on and on about a book I'm reading for way too long a period of time for you to enjoy. But until I'm fully adjusted to this new job and making videos at the same time, it's just like not possible. I'm sorry. Just also the hours of editing it involves. I'm gonna have to do a lot more planning with my booktube stuff, and I'm trying to figure it out. This is the end of the video. I feel like it's so low effort, but I did actually plan it. It's just that I've now discovered that like a lot of my reasons for wanting to read classics is purely just to like have read the classic to know what it is about when other people talk about them. So really this was a self-discovery kind of video. If you like this video, give it a like, thumbs it up. Let me know what classics are on your TBR, what classics are your favorite, because maybe I should add those to my TBR. And just in general, what ones are intriguing you, what ones do you hear about the most, which ones do you want to read the most, which ones have you read the most. Please comment below any of the aforementioned things that I just said. Thank you. Okay. And if you happen to like me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. But with that, this is the end of the video. I will see you in the next one. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Bye-bye.